Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. Andy, we're going to talk some New York football Giants today. New York obviously riding the high of the Knicks championship. The Knicks out of the clouds, winning a championship when no one thought they could do it with an ownership group that sucks. Many are asking, can the Giants do the same?
I don't think so. They have a bunch of ownership groups that sucks. Nobody likes the Mets. The Jets are kind of a front office mess. Cheapers. But it is still the Big Apple. And yes, we are going to start, as always, like we've done in the past, with the team with the longest odds to win their division. We're going reverse order, so we'll finish up with, the team that is favored to win the division. One division a week. We'll go through some of the changes that this team has gone through over the offseason and obviously the draft and whatnot. We'll give our power ratings. We'll talk about the schedule. Drew has not only those beautiful schedule matrices that he put together and shared on the internet, on the Twitter, but we have one for each team. We'll share those in the Discord after the show. So you can have your own little one just for that team. And we'll go over, like we said, our power ratings and a little bit of the odds if there's anything we're looking at futures-wise. Okay. We're not heavy on future. We're not heavy future books guys where, some of these people have 13 regular season win totals already. I've kind of been more of a, hey, let's add stuff during the year. That's a lot more fun because it's a little more informed, and I'm fine with that. So
that said, as we roll off the World Cup in Wimbledon, bankrolls are flush. Maybe we should put some in play.
We got to see if we need France and Eugenio Chikara to win the Open. That would be. Then I'd just be spraying the board. Let's play some money.
I'm usually down. And seriously, future strategy wise, we're not going to get into that too much today. But in the middle of July, I'm only swinging for the fences. I'm not dicking around with any small stuff.
We talked about that a little in previous years too. I think we said that if you're gonna sit and wait on your money to make you money for 9 months. It does suck. You really have to be like, this minus 110 is off. It should be minus 400. Like for me to really get excited about a win total or something. You need to be playing alts, long shots. You need to get your stuff in for, long shots and awards if you think something is grossly mispriced. I think you're right. That's what we need to be doing this time of year. I'm pretty light. We'll get to a few as we get to those teams. I do want to remind you to subscribe to the channel. That would make me feel better. I live in 2026 where my only validation is thumbs ups and subscribes and likes. I mean, I like my dogs. My family, they're good, but those help. Obviously, hit the thumbs up.
Andy, are you there? Are we having technical difficulties on our first show? Oh, no. Let's see if the commenters can help me out here. Is it me? Ooh, Andy froze. But it might be me. Are you back? You're back.
No, that was me. My internet dropped for my internet just was off.
For a thumbs up and then freezes. Classic.
So give the thumbs up and then... Sorry. I was where I was. Where was I?
You got too many thumbs up, I guess. The whole internet went down. Yeah.
It froze us. We did too many thumbs up. Worst ad read ever. But real quick, this is brought to you by Circa Sports again this year.
Hell yeah. I was almost afraid to ask.
Contests.
I didn't know if we did well enough last year to get the ask back. This is great news. We are sponsored by Circa Contests. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to get the details of this year's contest. I heard it's the biggest prize pool ever offered for
no rake. Head to Vegas, play from anywhere. Millions and millions and millions.
You know what else, Andy? I bet you right now the overlay is pretty big.
The overlay is huge right now because not many people have gotten out there and gotten signed up. I will be out there sign up weekend. I think Drew will too. We'll probably do a show. I'm going to figure out my one thing checklist for this year before we get into the Giants is figuring out if you can use a different kind of microphone when you're in an area with a lot of other people. Or just grabs, because I think those omnidirectional are grabbing a lot of. They were kind of noisy, the ones we did today. So I'm going to try to improve the sound quality when we do them from Radio Row up there. I'll ask some other folks that know maybe a little more about tech, or I'll probably just ask Claude, for Christ's sakes.
Well, let's talk about the Giants. As you mentioned, they are the fourth choice in the market for the NFC East. We will be doing the NFC East this week. Right now, Giants plus 555 to win the division. By my numbers, that's generous. Don't love this team, and we'll get into why. But they finished last season, Andy, 4-13. Some of their advanced metrics say that was a kind of an unfavorable win-loss record. By the time we got to the end of the season, I had them as about a minus 3.6-ish, minus 4, as far as the neutral power rating goes. And there were obviously some bright spots where some of their young players did some awesome things, and they had some wins that were unexpected, and the fans were excited. But on the balance of the season, it was a losing season for Brian Daboll, who started the season on a hot seat, ultimately gets fired. He got fired in season, and they put Mike Kafka in charge. Do I have that right? Elevated Kafka from offensive coordinator to head coach after Daboll got fired. Didn't matter. Still not a competitive run out. Although they did win their last 2 games at the Raiders and against the Cowboys, which did nothing to help their draft status. They could have potentially had a top 2 pick. They instead were, what were they? 5th and 10th? I forget.
5th and, yeah, roughly. I'll have it in. Yeah. I get it in my draft notes. Just my only note on that was it was something we thought they were going to wait to do at the end of the year. We always thought he was lame ducking it, but they were 2-8, I believe, and they had just blown as Sam is pointing out in the comments, they did blow a lot of leads. And the game that I think it was a double-digit fourth quarter lead that they blew against the Bears, I think, and
the Broncos one was the double-digit.
The Broncos one was. I think there were several. So I do think that final, they really did struggle late in games. And some of that had to do with the roster construction. And obviously they weren't super healthy. But, the Broncos one was rough.
Yeah, that will go down as the one I remember. All of that, but winning those last 2 games with nothing at stake except for draft position was something. So I will note that as you kind of evaluate the data for last year and make your numbers for this year, there was a lot of rumors that Jaxson Dart was seriously playing through some pretty serious injuries towards the end of last season. Ultimately, he obviously was able to finish the season. He ended up starting 12 games for the Giants. I forgot that we had 2 Jameis Winston games and we had 3 Russell Wilson starts. The 12 starts for Jaxson Dart showed promise. He was 4th overall in voting for Rookie of the Year. 4-8 record. I don't know.
He was no Tyler Shuck.
He was no Tyler Shuck, but no, I think there was glimmers of hope for the future. But it didn't look like the Giants really, kind of completely hit it out of the park with their trade up to draft him at the end of the first round. Last year. I think ultimately there's a reason that a lot of other teams passed on him. And I think the big questions surrounding his kind of future going forward, really. And this is going to be a theme today. Health and availability. Guys took some serious shots. He had, he's got a fighter's mentality. He's a football player, but he put himself in harm's way. Quite a lot. And you don't necessarily want to be doing that if you want a long, successful career as a quarterback. So that's kind of where my head is on the Jaxson Dart experience. What about you?
Yeah, same kind of thing. If you want, if you want a long career or to live into your 50s, you should probably start to avoid some of the contact, because he's taken more headshots than Eric Dickerson's entire career at this point now. Because he can't ever slide or take the sideline. He does like the contact, and I think it doesn't help that he's friends with Scadaboo, who has a obvious same kind of maybe I should hit my head against this concrete wall mentality. And Sam again, commenter of the year here. His sack data was somehow worse than Shedeur. Yeah, he was he was highs and lows. He'd make some big plays. We'd have some fun
I actually
drives.
excuse Shador's sack data. He was playing behind an absolute makeshift offensive line. Jaxson Dart's offensive line was fine. He was creating sacks, I thought, in a lot of ways.
So it was kind of highs and lows with him. He'd take a big sack, he'd make a big play. He had some fun times, he had some bad times. But as you mentioned, they didn't win a lot of games, and they didn't hang on to leads or win close games late. Of course, you're already got a guy who's red-faced on the red seat. Might as well get rid of him anyway, and you move on. And I think that's the headline of the offseason is maybe this roster isn't ready to compete.
I think there's two.
Well, you can only have one.
If I can only have one?
That's how a newspaper works. You think there's a second headline?
Well, there's a byline, I guess.
You have a subheading.
Yeah.
All right, what's your second one?
They extended extended Bean. What the hell?
I don't care about that. Doesn't affect my power number.
No, but it definitely makes you wonder what the hell's going on. It definitely kind of points to institutional loss of control or bad ownership, I suppose. It's fair. The general kind of moving on from Daboll to Harbaugh was met with a lot of fanfare. Harbaugh is obviously a very famous name. There was apparently a war of which team was going to ultimately bring him in, which surprised me. Nothing that Harbaugh did in his final chapter with the Baltimore Ravens suggested that he's got some sort of key to unlock the current state of the NFL. But there was a war. The Giants win. They bring in Harbaugh, and in that moment, it was like, well, I guess Brandon Beane is a lame duck GM here. He's kind of going to have to cede control over the vision of this team to Harbaugh, and he's probably just going to get, shuffled on after the draft is over. But they extended him, so this is now a little bit of a not sure who is in charge power wise. We're going to probably get at least 3 years from Harbaugh since he is. It is the Giants. They don't tend to move quickly. And so the big question for me is,
name like that, it's not someone you just, not, hey, we hired a special teams coordinator from some other team and we're going to move on after you. It's Harbaugh. And I think it's so early, like it's July 13th. So I don't know if I've had enough time to really chew on how I feel about this, because there's definitely two paths you take with it. And you pointed out, like, it hasn't been super whelming.
It hasn't been whelming at all.
It hasn't been whelming, much less overwhelming. How he's taken a lot of good players over the last few years and underperformed when it mattered. But if you take him at his full career and his full work of his general.
His resume, his body of work,
resume, the body of work. Yeah, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Like, it's still, hey, it's an upgrade, and a lot of teams obviously were eyeing for it. And I think what matters more here is,
I think a lot of teams are stupid.
Coordinator hires, because Harbaugh isn't. I don't know if he's micromanaging things.
He's going to get it. Okay, so first of all, the marriage between Bean and Harbaugh is a little. It was not Bean. What's his name? Shane. I keep saying Bean. That's the Bills.
I know.
The marriage between Shane and Harbaugh is not. It's not. It doesn't feel like this is a collaborative effort to me. And Harbaugh, I think I wish I could come up with any recent examples, Andy, of a coach who had a very long tenure where it kind of sputtered at the end. And he went from being kind of a game-changing optimizer, picking up all of the nickels, kind of going for it when everybody else was kicking, and then got more conservative as he got older, and then stopped winning as above expectation to the degree that he poisoned his his opinion in his own town, even though they were winning games. And like, there's been a lot of examples of this. Belichick happened to Belichick. Obviously, I would never say, what's his name? Who is the monocle guy from Seattle and then the Raiders last year? Pete Carroll. I wouldn't say
the monocle guy.
Yeah, obviously that's the.
I know.
I
see that. Yeah.
Pete Carroll was never like an optimizer of fourth downs or anything like that. But like this feels an awful lot like that, in where you have a guy who's has some success, continues to win and be competitive, maybe underperforms a bit. Fan base kind of sours on him. He's shown the door. He gets another opportunity, and it turns out he's too old to really grind an edge in the NFL anymore. This is a young man's sport. The fact that Belichick kind of lost his mind in the sense of advantage NFL decision making. I think there's a lot of evidence that Harbaugh was kind of on a similar path. So I'm not prepared to sit here and expect that Harbaugh is going to completely flip the culture and all of a sudden this is going to be a competitive team and they're going to get more out of the pieces that they have on the roster. Because I felt like Harbaugh, it was correct to move on from him if you were the organization of Baltimore. And yeah, there's absolutely a world where Harbaugh was a Lamar Jackson merchant for the last 10 years. No question that he could have just been riding the hot hand of an elite quarterback.
I mean, they put together some good defenses, but again,
Roquan Smith merchant.
Might have had
Mike McDonald merchant.
I was going to say Mike McDonald merchant. You spurred off a Super Bowl winning coach. I mean, kind of closing thoughts on this. I guess you got to take a path. You either got to decide if you think Harbaugh is a floor raiser because he is, the credibility he brings and the leadership he brings. The Matt Nagy thing is another one where you either are completely out on him because of what you saw in Chicago, or you hope that he rubbed off on the right people in Kansas City, I guess, and he can lean on some of the newer play calling styles that would really work well with the Dart and hopefully Nabors eventually when he gets healthy. So it could be a good scheme jump, I guess, for Jaxson Dart. And then I do like the defensive coordinator Wilson, where he came from. It's hard to say, hey, I loved what you did in Tennessee, because that team was always so devoid of talent on the roster. But he did it with some lesser names, and that defense took some steps forward at time. And I kind of like the whole. The all-encompassing turnover. Let's just wipe everything out, start fresh. We got young players here. We got a young nucleus. Let's get all new coaches. They brought a couple with them from Baltimore. I think the special teams coach is Baltimore.
I got to tell you, man.
Maybe Coach Brian Callahan.
With Harbaugh and Nagy, you have a couple of guys who have success on their resume thanks to Lamar Jackson and Pat Mahomes. Now let's see you do it with Jaxson Dart. Good luck. I think we're gonna get 3 seasons out of Harbaugh in New York, at least, maybe more. In those 3 seasons, I think he makes his Vegas win total. I'm gonna set the over under on seasons he makes his win total. I'm gonna set it at 0.5. I think he's going to underwhelm all 3 years. 1. You think he's going to push 1 year, or he's going to make it? Well, he's going to make his win total 1 year. He's 1 and 2. You think?
Well, just if he underwhelms for 2 straight years, it's going to be low enough in the 3rd year.
That's a good point, actually.
It's not like the Steelers have some plan right now, so nor the Browns. So I guess I think he's a floor raiser with a grain of salt. I am ready to. I'm not going to war with this team, though. I'm happy with the signings, because I don't know that there was somebody else that. But again, I don't want to litigate coach hirings at this point. It's already happened.
Well, I've already made up my mind. I'm out on this regime. I'm out.
For that reason, I'm out.
Yes. So we'll see. But I do think I don't know. I think that I do think that there is money to be made to fade the expectation that Harbaugh turns this thing around. if they do surprise and succeed over the next 3 seasons, in my opinion, it's going to be because Jaxson Dart takes some sort of step forward that we didn't see coming.
Yeah, we need an Asian handicap. We need like a 1.25 juice to the under. All right, let's get into other changes. Free agents, trades, the draft. Honestly, just start with the draft. It was 5-10. Arvell Reese and Francis. Boy, it's been a long time.
Can you remind me how they got the 10th pick?
Who did they trade with for that? Was that the
Cincinnati?
Yeah. Well, we'll get to Lawrence. That's all the other losses. What are the other losses? It's like Bobby Okereke and Russell Wilson.
Wandale Robinson, Cordell Flott.
All the
and then
Roy Robertson Harris
some guys
out for the season with an IRS. Yeah, like all the other losses piled up into one is like 1% of what you lost in Dexter Lawrence. And obviously you got a high draft pick for it, but
did you use it wisely?
You needed help up there, and I guess there was, if you really liked him, Maui Goa. Is that how we're doing it?
Sure.
Good run blocker. They need help in the interior.
A lot
Maybe
of the
right
talk,
guard, I don't know. We'll see.
I felt like a lot of the talk when the Giants got going was about like, we're gonna build through the trenches, blah blah blah, right? But then you look at what the roster, what the depth chart looks like right now, and it kind of felt like Joe Shane was
edges.
It kind of felt like Joe Shane was, drunk lame duck operating the ship this offseason, and then was kind of surprised as all of us that he got rehired. I don't know. I don't understand the vision here. I don't get it. Yeah, it's clear and obvious needs, and they didn't address it.
You start looking at the vision for a shitty team, and it's like, well, you had a lot of holes. So either you draft and pick up guys you really like, who you think you're getting a value on, or you pick up like, hey, this is a huge need. And even if you do all that, you still end up with needs, and you have a weird roster. And a big part of what I hate about the roster is, again, the Dexter Lawrence subtraction leaves you in a weird spot where he was such a force on the interior. I think it's a huge negative for these good edge rushers. And I think there's a good chance defense overall is very much bottom of the barrel because of that. And not only, the loss of Lawrence, but just what you're bringing to the table with the rest of the defensive roster, especially, maybe I have the secondary average-ish, but that's probably the ceiling. And again, you're going to start a linebacker that is a rookie this year. Mm-hmm. And we see a wide range of outcomes from that sort of thing, where if Reese isn't good and the Dexter Lawrence thing matters a lot more than maybe we even thought, the edge rushers take a step back and the secondary has like one injury, it's like a bottom 5 defense real quick. And it was something that had been thought of as a strength of this team over the last couple of years. So I'm with you there, especially with the Shane talk. Like, I know it is what it is, and I'm not making my power rating based on who your GM is, but for where we sit from a roster building standpoint, it's been confusing.
Yeah, and I think the Dexter Lawrence thing deserves a little bit more examination. He is entering his year 29 season. He clearly peaked at 25, 26. 27, he only started 12 games for you because I believe he got injured. And then 2025, he was available for all 17 games, but his performance was pretty decidedly lower. Only ended up with half a sack somehow last year, despite starting all 17 games. He was on the strength of the Giants team last year was their D-line. They had wave after wave of guys that could create chaos. And somehow Dexter Lawrence was, I guess, double teamed enough and took a step back enough that he wasn't as big a part of the picture for them. And he needed a new contract. Obviously, they didn't see eye to eye on what that compensation would be. And they get a first round pick for him. So I didn't think overall it was bad process by the Giants, but that in the context of everything else they did doesn't make sense to me. And Dexter Lawrence is still, I think, one of the top 5 interior linemen and defensive linemen in football. And now you have to figure out a way to be as good stopping the run and as good with interior pass rush with some guys who have never been able to carry that type of load. And I think that's going to put more pressure on your linebacking core, which is not very good. And today's NFL defense kind of comes down to can you stop the run without stacking the box? And if you can, then great. That gives you flexibility to put more coverage on the field, and you're a better pass defense. If you have to stack the box to stop the run, you are in trouble. And this Giants the roster that they have put together for this defense looks like they're going to have to stack the box to stop the run. So I think they're kind of screwed.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. It is not a team that we have a surprise and like, hey, we actually have this team rated higher than the Commanders. This is our 4th rated team for Drew, with a bullet, because you were a little higher on somebody else. But no, I'm kind of with you there. And I think, you look at the strength of the team, and it was the edges. How many sacks did Burns have? Like all of them? That's the other thing. Of course, Lawrence didn't have any. Like Burns had every sack. They had 30, 39, and he had 16 and a half.
16 and a half, yeah.
Yeah, that's a big chunk of it. But if Burns and who's our young guy?
Abdul Carter.
Carter. If Burns and Carter seeing
Thibodeau's still on this team. Yeah.
Thibodeau's a nice depth piece there, but Burns and Carter get more chips and doubles, and suddenly the strength goes to it's a middle of the pack pass rush. And again, if you're not stopping the run, if you're losing another big piece in the middle and your linebacking core is weak, then if your run stop sucks, like you said, then you got to bring a strength, I think, is your safeties. You got to bring them up. And then, like people are saying in the comments, you get beat over the top, and you're going to lose a lot of games where it'll be fun. It might be an over team. I kind of hope the offense is fun. Like once Nabors gets back, might be a fun over team.
Interesting. Okay. Any other thoughts about you kind of brushed over Wan'Dale Robinson leaving. He ultimately was their top performing wide receiver last year. He had some chemistry with Jaxson Dart. He started 15 games. Nabors, how many games did Nabors even start last year? 4 games for Nabors before he did the ACL. So, and that's not going great.
Yeah, I don't want to glaze Wan'Dale Robinson a ton, but he was a pretty decent slot option for this team. And it hurts a lot more because of what's left on the roster and what they forced to sign, and the fact that Nabors is injured. So the fact that your wide receiver room is what it is now, with bringing in Darnell Mooney. Who else? What was the other one?
Calvin Austin, JuJu Smith-Schuster, Odell Beckham, someone named Odell Beckham Jr., Braxton Berrios. They brought in tight end / wide receiver Isaiah Likely.
Likely is the one that I'm most excited about out of any of those names. He's a good red zone weapon. He's especially with Nabors is out, he's valuable. But yeah, we got Calvin Austin the third. Hopefully just a punt returner, I guess, but it's pretty weak without Nabors right now. And yeah, like you said, you lose Wan'Dale Robinson, and a couple of these strengths we've seen over the last couple of years are floating near the bottom right now for me, rating wise.
Okay. Should we go there? Ratings?
Yeah, I don't know. Did you have anything else? DJ Reader?
Basically the DJ Reader edition. I know people
you
will
needed
probably
to do
argue
something
that
in the middle.
Yeah,
people.
There's probably someone out there who's like a super Giants hardo or even a run game aficionado who's like, DJ Reader's an upgrade over Dexter Lawrence in the run game. Okay, all right, fine. He's not as impactful a player in my opinion. Tremaine Edmonds. I was wildly unimpressed by his performance last year in Chicago. He'll play, yeah, but
he's your middle linebacker.
He was available for a reason.
Greg Newsome the second.
He was available for a reason.
I think he's league average. Like he can, again, he'll play. You need an outside corner. I mentioned Mooney. Shelby Harris. How old's Shelby Harris?
Available for a reason.
Yeah, it feels like I need to go look up Shelby Harris age, and it's going to surprise me.
He is 1991, so he's 34.
That's not as old as I thought.
Oh, he turns 35 in August.
Daniel Falele.
Yeah.
Came with Harbaugh.
Yeah, Falele, Patrick Ricard, and Isaiah Likely all came with Harbaugh. And
Jordan
again,
Stout.
You want more evidence that you might have lost the locker room? Oh, and Darius Washington as well, another non-needle mover. Like the fact that all these guys came with them, and they're guys that I think Baltimore was fine with letting walk out the door is more, more evidence for eyebrow raising. Anyway, I think anyway it looked like a pretty incomplete. It looked like a pretty incomplete team to me in terms of the way they treated their offseason.
And then just real quick, the rest of the draft outside of Malagoa and Brees, Colton Hood, he'll make the corner rotation. Developmental depth at corner. Malachi Fields, Notre Dame wide receiver. Maybe somebody who sees some time because of the general shittiness of the rest of the wide receiving core, and then some depth pieces in round 6. I don't think they had any 4th or 5th rounders. It doesn't look like, because of some of the trades they made. So defensive line, offensive line, linebacker depth, and special teams kind of depth. We mentioned the losses, the big one being Dexter Lawrence, and basically outside of Wandell and Russell Wilson, who is done with this league. And then we'll get to ratings.
All right, let's do it. Bad. No, I think the seriousness, let's kind of talk about how you come up with a quarterback OC number here. I'm cool on Matt Nagy. I'm expecting him to run a West Coast style scheme. To me, that requires a quarterback who's, has a different skill set. The quarterback scheme does not fit. The quarterback's strengths, Jaxson Dart's strengths, do not fit with what Matt Nagy's scheme, ought to be relying on, in my opinion, with the exception of RPO. I don't think they have a talented enough wide receiver room to have, kind of elite, pre-snap motion and, kind of good spread option route running. I think the screen game, which is another signature of Nagy's offenses, is going to struggle with the talent you have in the running back room. This looks like a misfit to me between what Nagy would ideally want to work with and the pieces he has in place. So I can't give Jaxson Dart any type of bump as far as expecting him to take a step forward based on his any type of expected positive interference with the offensive coordinator. You refute that at all?
I'm going to pass over Nagy and talk about Callahan, because I actually do like that hire as a quarterback's coach. Coming over from Tennessee. He's another one that's I think is maybe a better fit for getting more out of Dart than actually Nagy's scheme. And we'll see what the scheme ends up being. We got to actually see it first, but I'm kind of with you on trying to figure out exactly how those two mesh together. But Callahan brings a bunch of experience, and generally the quotes I'm seeing from him is like, I'm going to let a quarterback play to his natural talents. I'm going to try to work around that instead of changing someone. So I do like that as far as what we've seen, some of the success stories from quarterback coach, mashing it out. So yeah, I'm not super hot on Nagy, but I do like Brian Callahan coming in.
Nagy's system generally relies on a quarterback being able to make kind of quick decisions and have good chemistry with his wide receivers who are making calls on the fly for their routes.
Yeah, a lot of empty sets. There'll be more motion, hopefully. And
I feel like there's going to be a lot of turnovers.
There's going to be a lot of screens.
Yeah, I hope you like screens. What if we build the whole offense out of screens? I don't know. Not much to get excited about, in my opinion, on the offensive side of the ball. And I gave, I think I finished last year with Jaxson Dart rated in the 2s because of his injuries issues he was dealing with. I'm giving him a modicum of a step forward with the, with this sophomore year, and I'm at 4.1 for quarterback plus OC combination in New York. Where are you at?
4.6. Obviously, it was going to be a little higher because I'm keen on the Callahan hire, but it's kind of based on, I think, because he hasn't played football in 6 months, he's healthy, and that was, like you mentioned, that's such a big part of him being effective. So this is one that can quickly move down, I think, though, if it's quickly apparent that the scheme and the player aren't meshing.
Okay. Skill group for me was a 3.7. I think this is one of the worst. This is I think the worst skill group in the NFC East by a good amount. Actually, my number is not that much higher for Washington, but I actually kind of came up to 3.7 because I thought I was being a little bit too hard on them. What was your rationale for skill group number on Giants?
I'm at 2.9, and
okay, so
obviously
I was too high here.
Well, I don't know. Again, these are all very subjective. I'm using a lot of different stuff and trying to figure out exactly, who. This is a really tough one to figure out. If you have a team with a lot of continuity and you kind of know who's getting the touches, you can make some pretty good guesses on generally what the offense is going to look like. But there's, a lot of turnover, and you got a bit of a committee backfield. You got a bunch of wide receivers who aren't inspiring a ton of confidence. And until Nabors get back, it's a really kind of a thin, ugly room. We'll see how Likely fits into this offense. That could be a bump up if he really starts to contribute. But yeah, for now, it's a 2.9. That's one of my lower ratings. I think it ranked 30th in the league for me. And again, if Nabors comes back and he's healthy eventually, it's a lot closer to, 20th, I think, maybe higher.
Okay. Offensive line rating was tough for these guys because there's a world in where this is a good offensive line, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of offensive lines like that this year, Drew, where it's like, hey, I could see this working out because they got some continuity and they got a couple of pieces, and then they got question marks. And the question marks always swing. The injuries, there's always injuries that'll swing stuff, but the question marks swing these ratings from, what we put together in the summer to what we're trotting out there for like week 5, week 6. And yeah, at least 3 question marks, I guess.
The entire interior for me is question marks. I think Illuminor and Andrew Thomas are good tackles, but the 3 guys in the middle for me were all question marks. I'm starting out with a minus for the rookie just because it's unproven. I don't really like John Michael Schmitz Jr. as a center. I think he's kind of bottom 3rd in the league, and John Runyon similarly at left guard is bottom 3rd for me. So I'm at 3.9 for this group. But I can see a world where they impress to the good.
Yeah, I was higher here. I went 4.5, 4.5 exactly for me. It's like good left tackle, good other tackle. And then, it's a lot of mush in the middle. I'm a little higher on Schmitz just because I think he needed some time under his belt. I think it's really hard to step in as a center in the NFL. And then, I would assume you start the rookie over Falele at right guard, but we'll see how that turns out in the camp battles as we go. And there's room for downside here, especially if you get an injury. And if Thomas gets injured, then I don't know what this offensive line is besides doomed, I suppose.
Fair enough.
I am a Minnesota guy, Schmitz. He's a gopher.
What does that get you as far as percentile goes for the Giants?
For 40th? Offense, I am
39th, 40th.
41%.
Okay, so we're about the same ballpark. They're going to end up being around the 25th, 26th best offense for me, and I think there's absolutely scope to go down if it turns out that the marriage between Dart and Nagy is no bueno, which I'm guessing is going to be realistically possible. All right, defense, bottom 5, even with a good pass rush. Is that kind of your thought process here?
Yeah, and I'm not as keen on the pass rush as you either because of some of the stuff I've already said. But start with your pass rush number, and then I'll get into mine because I think that's our biggest disagreement.
So I love Brian Burns. I think Abdul Carter realistically takes us. He wasn't a top 3, no doubt. Special talent in last year's draft for no reason. I think he's going to be pretty damn effective this year. I like the kind of flexible piece you got in Reese in the draft. I like Kayvon Thibodeau as a change of pace guy, although boy, oh boy, does he feel like a luxury considering the other holes you have on your defense. So it's I gave them a 7.2. I think you're going to generate a pretty consistent pass rush with these guys, but I also don't think that that's going to matter much because you really only need that if you're defending leads. And I don't know that the Giants are doing much of that this year.
Yeah, this was our biggest disagreement. I was below average on pass rush, despite how good Burns is and how high of a ceiling Abdul Carter is. And some of it is just the output we saw last year. And I think maybe something you just said has me maybe wanting to dig in a little this, because whenever we have a big disagreement, I always like to go back and look at my process and figure out, like, why am I so far off? And I did a little of that earlier today, but some of it was just the output. Like, they were middle of the pack for sacks last year. And, honestly, when you're trailing, I guess teams aren't dropping back, deep dropbacks as often. That's going to hurt. But they were 21st in pressure rate. It was middle of the pack as far as output, despite having, this one-man band, Brian Burns, who was just, absolutely wreaking havoc at times. And as I mentioned, a big part of the issue for me is losing Dexter Lawrence. And like I said earlier, if you're getting more double teams and more chip blocks on Carter and especially Burns, then you might have a much even lower output at this point. And as you mentioned, Thibodeau, it's like your only depth, I guess. I like him, but like you said, it goes back to the roster building stuff. It's a weird spot to have excess at when you could use help. Maybe Thibodeau could gain like 40 pounds and become a DT. I don't think that's happening in the next month. And then, yeah, again, your upside is leaning on younger players, which is sometimes tough at times too. So I'm probably gonna bump this up a little because this number just looks galling when I stare at it. But a lot of it was just based off output from last year and then losing Burns, and I had to go a little below average.
Okay.
So I'm sure someone will be mad about this.
Okay. Run stop for me was low. This was the worst run defense in the NFL last year. Did you have that, by the way?
Yeah,
this was the worst run defense?
I have it, and it's a 2.9 for me this year. It's 30th ranked.
I'm at a 3.1, but I'm prepared to go lower.
Yeah, you lost Robertson, Harrison, Lawrence, and we bring in Reeder and Edmonds. So it's like a partial fill. It might be worse. So we'll see. And again, if this team is behind and you have bad run defense, you're not going to have fun in the record.
I'm also assuming that Harbaugh is going to stick pretty aggressively towards we're going to stop the run, and that's going to expose his coverage, right? Like I was saying, my guess would be he's going to shuffle players and or put extra guys down in the box to make sure that this is not a team that gives up running at the same clip that they did last year. Kind of a shocking number of rush EPA per play allowed last year for these guys. It was startlingly poor. This has scope to go down. I'm at 3.1 for now. Coverage for me is 3.3. Again, I'm kind of building in some expectation that the way that they're going to scheme this thing is going to be pretty conservative on the running stop, and that's going to expose some of these cornerbacks. I think they had some pretty obvious holes in their pass defense last year from a coverage standpoint. I don't think Greg Newsome really addresses those holes. They have a meaningful problem in the fact that Deonte Banks can't beat out Paulson Adebo at this point of his career. Colton Hood is an experiment. If he just happens to work out as a rookie, I'll be impressed, I guess, but I'm not expecting it. I don't think our Darius Washington moves the needle. Drew Phillips is not a great slot corner. This coverage unit overall to me looks pretty suspect, and I think you're going to be able to throw in the Giants pretty comfortably. So I'm at 3.3.
Yeah, this is our second disagreement on the Giants. I was a little higher here. I had a 4.8. And again, a lot of it was just output last year where they were very middle of the pack in EPA per pass attempt. You didn't
have to throw them.
Yeah, I know. And again, it was fine. And if you are going to commit more to the run, maybe these guys get diced up a little more. But everybody I looked at, it's like, yeah, you're fine. Like, yeah, I get you're paying too much for Paulson and Debo, but that doesn't factor into how I feel about him as a player. It's like, you're fine. The safeties are fine. Drew Phillip is a solid, okay slot corner. Like, everybody's just okay. And same thing with, you bring in the rookie. You hope he's like, hey, we have another nickel guy, or we have another guy who can help out when we're putting 5-6 secondary defenders out there. If he grades out to the better and ends up playing more, then I guess even better. But I kind of just went with, there's nobody here that's like a massive ceiling raiser. It's just a bunch of like floor guys, and I think it's just slightly below average for me.
Okay. Defense overall for me is in the 45th percentile. So that's pulled up significantly by what I think are kind of clear and obvious highlights on the defensive depth chart for pass rush. I don't know if Abdul Carter ends up being a bust. That's going to be pretty. It's going to be pretty wild. They've put an absolute shit ton of their team building capital into the edge position.
I think he ends up with like a 20 sack season on whatever team he plays for next.
That's fun.
You guys want to see a chart?
Yeah. What do we got?
Like this is our New York Giant power ratings. I wanted to just put it in chart form, but then I made a spider chart too, so you can see Drew
where
much
we're different
keener on skill and pass rush than I am. Higher on Harbaugh, a little higher on the OC, and a little higher on the coverage. But funny enough, when you add it all together, and this happens like 10 times a year when we do these, where we have 3 or 4 disagreements, but some are in the opposite direction, and we ended up with damn near the same power rating. So Drew is a minus 3.2. I'm a minus 3.1. This is a team that wins, 5, 6, 7 games if
Probably.
Things things shake out normal to a little above average. The schedule is a lot easier. I think maybe that's my cue to switch to this.
Ooh, look at that.
Do this.
Look at that.
There's some wins. Here.
Are there?
A lot of it. Yeah.
You going to have the balls to take the Giants in Survivor Week 4 against the Cardinals?
That's not going to be a problem for us. Are we making it to Week 4?
Well, I think you can pick against the Cardinals week 1, 2, 3. It's a big question: do you take them to go against the Cardinals week 4? I don't know, man.
I'm not the quarterback for the Cardinals.
I'm not convinced that the Giants are going to be 4.5-point favorites at the end of the season against the Browns. I think the Browns have scope to be a better team by that point in the year. I'm not convinced they're going to be 3-point favorites at home against the Titans. I'm not convinced they're going to be 2.5 points favorites at home against the Saints. I think this is a team that the market is right now a little warm on in terms of fair rating. And I think as it gets corrected and as some of these other teams, maybe potentially surprise to the good at the start of the season, the Giants might not be favored in many this year. And you could actually see them flip to being pretty significant dogs against the likes of the Jags and the Colts and the Niners later in the season. I don't think any of those games are going to be under a field goal. Difficult rest spots in a couple of places on this schedule. Easy travel, no unusual, start times other than the kind of a funky Monday Night Football game week 2. Rams are going to be coming back from Australia, and the Giants go out to LA and play on that night on Monday Night Football. Kind of a little bit of a weird one. Rams with extra rest, obviously, but the travel's kind of, it's pretty much neutralized, even though it's a road game. Cross-country trip for the Giants doesn't matter. A lot of travel at the end of the season, at Seattle, at Detroit, at Dallas, all in that final quarter of the season.
And I think, as you pointed out, like we're not expecting this team, even if they surprise. We're not saying like the surprise is they make the playoffs. The surprise would be like they're not eliminated from the playoffs in the last few weeks, and it was a fun 7 or 8 win team that had some exciting games against some shittier teams. But if it breaks the other way, and let's say Cleveland outperforms their expectations this year, and that's a loss, it could be a pretty bad feeling going into the end of the year when you get to the offseason if you just lost like 6 or 7 straight. Because like you mentioned, there's a lot of travel and a lot of tough teams at the end. And if you don't win that Cleveland game in the middle of that, you're feeling pretty awful as a Giants fan when you hit New Year's Eve.
Yeah, I think the especially interesting kind of sequences that the Seattle Cleveland sequence, because Seattle's defense is going to smother you, and you're not going to be feeling good about your offense. And then Cleveland's defense obviously has taken a step back in the absence of Myles Garrett, but still should be pretty dang good. They have a really talented linebacking core. Byron Young is perfectly capable of keeping them above the Mendoza line in pass rush. So Cleveland, I think, is going to be a very interesting test for the Giants offense. If you don't prove anything kind of in that stretch, Detroit, Dallas, Philly, you're going to get outscored in those 3 games almost surely.
That's the nice part about the Cleveland game is you don't have to play Myles Garrett this year because he's not. Oh
wait,
never mind. You have the Rams.
You get him week 2. Oh.
Yep. You get him earlier in the season. He's fresher.
Yeah, a lot of good pass rushers on your schedule generally. Ton of elite pass rushers. So you better hope Andrew Thomas is healthy for all 17 games and keeps your boy Jaxson Dart upright. Yeah, I mean, this looks like a 4-10. This looks like a 4-5 win team to me. Again.
Yeah, I mean the win total 7.5. If you made me make a bet right now, despite me being a little rosier, I would take that under. I don't think this is some good value to win an NFC East or what Super Bowl is about 70 to 1. NFC's half that. One bet that I think is very much overvalued is Harbaugh, Coach of the Year, is pretty low odds at some place where I believe at DraftKings he's the favorite even. He's like 5 to 1 at some shops. I get that he's a big name, and you have this thing where you get a big name in a new spot, and people get excited. Like, look what he did! He took a team that won 4 games, and they won 8 games. Man, 8 seems like a lot, and even that feels like there's got to be like 4 or 5 guys that are having better seasons than him. I don't understand him as a favorite. I'm not the kind of guy who wants to go be a market maker on Kalshi for the opposite of that for 9 months, but the odds for Harbaugh to be Coach of the Year seem a little ishy.
Yeah. The question is, does the schedule put wind in your sails if you're on the no? Like, does he immediately drift?
Can you just get out of that at some point?
Can you get out of it early? Which I think, the fact that they're favored in weeks 3, weeks 4 makes that's probably when you want to bet that. The fact that the Giants are plus 555 to win the East, but he's like 5 to 1 for Coach of the Year makes no sense to me. One of those should be shorter than the other, and it's backwards. I would consider under 6.5 wins for these guys a plus 147. I don't think 7's really going to be much of a sweat. I mean, divisions, obviously injuries could change a lot of things about the way we look at the NFC East. There's not any kind of world beater in this division. Every team has its flaws. So could the Giants put together the type of campaign that wins a bad division this year and he gets the credit? Sure. But this does not feel like the Patriots last year, where you have some sort of super pudding soft schedule that you can take advantage of with your young quarterback taking a step forward and launch that into a Coach of the Year campaign.
No, it was one of the. I had a couple. It's funny. I put some like quick hits at the end that I was gonna put to you, and basically we got to them all already. So it's funny, but I did have mentioned that it was one of the hardest schedules in 2025, and right now projected it's middle of the pack. But there's still a bunch of tough teams where I still am not feeling good about taking upside with this team. The other, my other one was trading Dexter Lawrence for the picks, the right call. I think you think that's correct. And that we already had the Harbaugh discussion in depth. So a little cold, but that's what happens when you talk about the worst team in the division, guys. We're going to be a little cold. It's not going to fix itself overnight.
What about Jaxson Dart's performances in the early going would change your opinion about this team to the tune of really affecting their rating?
I mean, I've changed my mind on coaches before, and I'm with you. I'm not like a Nagy guy, but he just did spend some time with a lot smarter people than hopefully he'd been spending time with before he was in Kansas City. So if he learned something and he can put together a scheme that really brings out the best, I think that's the answer.
Yeah, because this tenure in Kansas City, the Chiefs got better every year, right?
Well, there was injuries.
Okay.
I wasn't calling plays. I wasn't.
I know, it's true.
So that's where I'm like, what was he even doing down there? Hopefully he was just taking notes. But no, I think that's the key. Is like, if the scheme looks like it is partially or wholly responsible for Dart taking even a little bit of a step forward, and he looks serviceable. Like if you get hey, Jaxson Dart's the 15th best quarterback in the league, probably a buying on this team.
See, here's the problem. For him to take that step forward, he's going to have to run more, and if he runs more, he's going to get hurt.
Yeah, it's the Dart paradox.
It's the Dart paradox. Yeah, that's right.
Zeno's Dart. So
that's right.
All right.
Scatterbo, 2,000 yards. You got it in pencil or pen?
No. Probably laughed at.
Is this the youngest we've ever seen a guy with like clear and obvious question marks about head injuries in this stage of his career? He's a second-year player, right?
Yeah.
Was it year 2 with Puka that we were kind of starting to worry a little bit if he had taken too many?
Puka's biting people and stuff, so I'm extra worried about him. Scatterbo's just off having fun. Hopefully it's a nice committee again where he doesn't need to get that many touches, so he can, be able to walk with his grandchildren someday. But man, that guy has zero regard for his body at this point.
Okay. All right. Giants soft bet against. I'm just a hair below market. We didn't mention this, but Giants market rating
we should bring up the general market.
Minus 1.9. Minus 1.9 is their market rating. So we're lower.
We're a little low. We're a little
point lower,
which is fine.
Point lower. Yeah, I think so. All right, man. Let's put a bow on this and go talk commies.
Can you hit the music?
If I can remember where it is.
I hit the gong.
Hit the gong.
Hit the gong.
All right, let's go talk some commies. We did it under an hour.